They called him a coward. Not behind his back. To his face. In front of everyone. Because when every soldier picked up a rifle, he refused. In a time of war, he chose not to carry a weapon. And that decision made him a target. Not for the enemy, but for his own unit. They laughed at him. They pushed him. Some wanted him gone. Others said he would get them all killed. "Why are you even here?" they asked. But Desmond Doss didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't try to prove them wrong. He simply stood there, holding onto something no one else could see. A belief. A line he refused to cross. While others trained to fight, he trained to save. While others prepared to take lives, he prepared to protect them. Day after day, the pressure grew. The insults didn't stop. The isolation didn't fade. And still, he didn't change. Because for him, this wasn't weakness. It was conviction. And soon, that conviction would be tested in the most brutal way possible. Not in training. Not in words. But in war. It didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. The more he refused to carry a weapon, the more they pushed him. What started as laughter turned into anger. His unit didn't see conviction. They saw weakness. They saw a liability. Someone who didn't belong in war. The pressure became constant. Orders were repeated. Again and again. Pick up the rifle. Do your duty. Be like everyone else. But Doss didn't move. He didn't argue. He didn't fight back. And that made it worse. Because the more calm he stayed, the more it frustrated them. Some tried to intimidate him. Others tried to isolate him. He was left out. Ignored. Pushed to the edge of the group. But still, he stood firm. Not because it was easy, but because he had already decided who he was. And he wasn't going to change that. Not for pressure. Not for fear. Not even for war. But the system around him had limits. And soon, his refusal would no longer be ignored. Because in the military, there is one thing you cannot do. Disobey. And now, they were ready to take action. The pressure finally reached its limit. This wasn't just about opinions anymore. It became official. Reports were written. Complaints were filed. Commanders started asking questions. How can a soldier go to war without a weapon? To them, it didn't make sense. To them, it was unacceptable. Doss was called in. Not for praise, but for judgment. He stood in front of men who had already made up their minds. Men who believed he didn't belong. They gave him a choice. Pick up a rifle. Or leave. It should have been simple. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Because Doss didn't hesitate. He didn't change his answer. Not even now. Not when everything was on the line. He stood there. Calm. Certain. Unmoved. And in that moment, it became clear. This wasn't just about war anymore. It was about who he was. And he was not going to walk away from that. The day finally came. No more training. No more arguments. No more second chances. They were going to war. The ships were loaded. The air was heavy. No one joked anymore. No one laughed. Even the strongest men grew quiet. Because this was real now. Not drills. Not practice. War. Doss stood among them. The same men they doubted. The same men they didn't trust. And yet, he was still there. Still without a weapon. Still holding on to the same belief. As the coastline disappeared behind them, there was no turning back. Only one direction. Forward. Toward something none of them could fully understand yet. But they would soon. Because waiting on the other side was a battlefield that would change everything. The moment came without warning. 1 second. Silence. The next. Everything exploded. Gunfire. Shouting. Chaos. The ground shook beneath them. Men ran forward. Some froze. Others dropped instantly. There was no time to think. No time to prepare. Only react. Only survive. This was war. Not training. Not theory. Reality. And in that moment, everything they believed about themselves was tested. Doss moved with them. Through the noise. Through the confusion. Through the fear. But unlike the others, he carried no weapon. Only a purpose. While bullets tore through the air, he looked for something else. Not targets. But the fallen. Because in the middle of chaos, his mission was different. And it had just begun. The battle didn't slow down. If anything, it became worse. The noise never stopped. The air was thick with smoke and fear. Men were falling all around him. Some called for help. Others couldn't. Most soldiers focused on one thing. Survive. Get through it. Stay alive. But Doss saw something different. He saw those left behind. The ones who couldn't move. The ones no one could reach. And instead of moving forward, he turned back. Again. And again. Through the chaos. Through the danger. He found them. One by one. Dragging them. Carrying them. Refusing to leave them behind. Every time he brought someone to safety, he whispered something. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a simple prayer. Please, help me get one more. And then he went back. He didn't stop. Not after one. Not after two. He kept going back. Again. And again. Each time. The same danger. The same chaos. The same risk of not coming back. But he didn't think about that. He only saw one thing. Someone still out there. Someone still waiting. Every trip into the battlefield could have been his last. But he didn't slow down. He didn't hesitate. He moved through smoke. Through fear. Through everything that made others stop. One more. Then another. And another. No one was counting. No one even knew what he was doing. But he knew. And that was enough. Because for him, it was never about numbers. It was about one life at a time. And as long as someone was still there, he wasn't done. At first, no one noticed. The battle was too loud. Too chaotic. Too overwhelming. But then, something changed. Men started to see it. One soldier. Then another. Being pulled to safety. Again. And again. At first, they didn't understand. Who was doing it? How? Why? But slowly, it became clear. It was him. The same man they had doubted. The same man they had called weak. The one who refused to carry a weapon. Now, he was the one saving them. Dragging them out. Carrying them to safety. Going back. When no one else would. And something shifted. Not in the battlefield. But in their minds. Because now, they were watching him. And realizing they had been wrong. No one was counting. Not during the battle. Not in the chaos. There was no time for that. Only movement. Only survival. Only the next moment. But when it finally slowed, something became clear. Men who should not have made it were alive. One. Then another. Then more. They started asking questions. How did he get out? Who brought him back? And the answer was always the same. It was him. Again. And again. And again. They began to realize. This wasn't just luck. This wasn't coincidence. It was deliberate. One man. Going back into danger. Over and over again. Not for recognition. Not for reward. But because someone was still there. And by the end, they understood something no one expected. He hadn't just saved a few. He had saved many. More than anyone thought possible. When it was over, the battlefield fell quiet. Not completely. But enough. To hear what had happened. The same men who once doubted him now looked at him differently. Not with questions. Not with judgment. But with respect. Because they finally understood. The men they had called weak was the strongest among them. The one they thought would fail had carried more than anyone else. Without a weapon. Without hate. Without hesitation. He went where others couldn't. He did what others wouldn't. And because of that, dozens of men were still alive. Not because of orders. Not because of training. But because one man refused to change who he was. They once asked him, "Why are you even here?" Now, they had their answer. Because sometimes, strength isn't about fighting. Sometimes, it's about choosing not to.